All right. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Shiftwell Six Elements series. I am Jordana Cole. I am the Chief Product and Research Officer here at Shiftwell. And just as a reminder, at Shiftwell, we're helping organizations like yours activate human potential at scale by combining research, people, and AI to empower your entire ecosystem to close the gaps in what we need to be at our best every day. We've explored a few other elements already, but today we're diving into what might be my favorite one, which is relationships. And I like to think of relationships as the hidden infrastructure of thriving organizations. And today we're going to explore how connection fuels growth, belonging, and sustainable performance. So I am thrilled to welcome my friend, my colleague, somebody who has been a mentor to me, Lisa Sanson. Lisa is a leadership coach and consultant with expertise in positive psychology, organizational development, leadership development, and change management. She's worked with a number of organizations across industries and higher education institutions. She teaches coaching. She's currently working on her DBA, which for those of you who might not be in Canada, might not know, stands for Doctor of Business Administration. Her dissertation is on the topic of manager feedback in the workplace. In brief, her work's all about people. So you can see why we've invited her to join us today. Lisa, I'm so thrilled to talk to you. How are you? Hi.
Amazing. I am always so excited for any opportunity for us to chat, Jordana. We just get so excited and so generative. And also, like, I like how we challenge some of the ideas that are out there. And I know we're going to do that today.
You're spot on. You're spot on. So let's go right in.
Let's do it.
So you studied for years, you coach people for years, especially leaders, on the power of relationships. So, what do you see as the connection between high quality relationships, people being at their best, and organizational performance?
Yeah. I mean, so many connections. So many connections. I mean, first of all, we work with other people. And the whole reason that organizations put us into teams or groups or departments or units is so that we can do more, we can do it better, and we can do it together. And we
Mhm.
know in our world, we want to combine people who bring different experiences, who bring different strengths, who bring different skills, who bring different abilities. Our world is very complex these days. We simply cannot do big, hard things alone. And I might argue we were never meant to do big, hard things alone, right? Even if you go back 10,000 years to when our ancestors were running across the savannah and chasing down really big animals, they didn't do that alone. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing today. Whether we're creating reports, whether we are chasing quarterly returns, whatever it is, we do it all better when we do it together. And that means relationships. We need to have those relationships with other people, not just in our organization, but think about vendors, think about suppliers, think about
Mhm.
clients, think about mentors, think about all the other people in our life. And that's just on the professional side. We also know that if your personal side relationships are challenging, you bring some of that into the workplace. And so relationships all around are important for everything.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm so inspired and like
Here
emboldened.
we go.
I
Yeah.
know by what you shared. And yeah, we never do things alone, right? And we don't have business without people. People are our customers, people make it get it done, people are our partners, and the relationships are that glue that keep people together. Um, in organizations, relationships often get labeled as the soft skills. And I think you just hit on, like, as creatures, we are social animals and we get things done together. But let's expand on that a little bit. Why do you actually think that those relationship skills, those soft skills, are strategic advantages for organizations?
Your organization is a function of the people who are in your organization. I was talking with a group of leaders just yesterday who have come
Mm,
together in a leadership program that I work with. And we talked about the critical importance of getting the right people on the bus to start with, and how who we hire and who we let into our teams is absolutely essential. And I expect that you and I and everybody listening to this and watching this can think about a time when the hiring decision might not have been the best one, whether that's something you were involved in yourself in that hiring process, or somebody was brought onto a team that you were on. And after a while, you kind of looked at them, you're like, not sure you're contributing in a great way here. And we should be slow to hire because it needs to be a deliberate, intentional, thoughtful process. Bringing one new person onto the team changes the dynamics, and we've all experienced that. And similarly, when there is that, let's say, toxic individual, for lack of a better word, just to really simplify it, that
Yeah.
toxic individual, we need to take action very, very quickly on that because that spreads so quickly. And again, I expect we can all think of a time when we have been party to that. We've seen it, we've experienced it. Maybe in some cases, we know that it has been us, if we're going to be really honest with ourselves. And it was important for that person not to be a part of that team, at least not in that way. They can grow, they can change, they can be supported, but the organization has got to take action on that. And those are the things that cannot be replicated elsewhere, right? It's a
Mm,
competitive advantage for organizations. And we see research, for example, if you talk about the VC world, venture capitalists look at the dynamics of the leadership team and who's on the leadership team and those relationships as part of their considerations. Do we want to invest in this organization? Do we want to buy out this organization? Financial decisions get made based on those relationships. And we
mhm.
also see that leadership teams, when they work better together, when they have more diversity on them, for example, those relationships matter. Those boards, those leadership teams, they outperform other ones. And so we just see it over and over and over again. As much as we would like to focus on the numbers and all the really kind of hard metrics, those people skills and those relationships matter a ton for a whole bunch of desirable business outcomes.
Wow, you bring up such a really interesting point, right? About the VCs or investors, that it's not just the product, it's how that team works together. And as you were talking, it made me think that we have all these different component parts, but relationships are the things that actually make those parts work together and create those outcomes of those numbers. And at the core, communication is such a key thing that either creates operational friction or removes it.
Yeah. And we know what happens if you kind of think about those relationships as permeating every part of your organizational engine. We know what happens to your car engine when it runs out of oil, right? If you're still on those gas powered cars and you need the oil, right? It can run really smoothly or it will seize up and just stop working.
Yeah.
And we see this with leaders. A lot of the leaders that I coach, they spend a ton of time trying to figure out, first of all, organizational relationships. We talk about the political organizational savviness, for example, how important it is for them. And when they have one person on the team who is not, kind of being that social lubricant, um, leaders spend a lot of time working with that person, trying to
Mhm.
help them do what it is they need to do. It takes a lot of time to make sure the relationships are running well so that your organization can work well. And I think we all know this intuitively. When you ask leaders what keeps them up at night, I mean, for some, it might be the numbers, but usually that's as a function of relationships. They're thinking about the people. They're thinking about how do I interact with these people, my boss, my VP, my team of leaders, the people who report to me. It's all about the relationships. That's what they're spending a lot of their time thinking about.
Yeah, even the customers, that's people. How
Yes.
do I maintain that relationship? How do I get that change adoption? And, I loved everything that you just said, that idea of that, like, social lubricant, and even what you just said, the people keep me up at night. I can't tell you how many organizations across different industries, different sizes I've either worked in my career or consulted with in my career, where when you ask the question of, what's the best thing about this organization, or why do you stay at the organization, doesn't matter where you're at,
Yeah,
people is always the top answer.
it's the
And
people.
I think it connects back to what you just said. Now, you hit on this a little bit earlier where you talked about the importance of relationships at home. One of the things here at Shiftwell that we really are focused on is that the the holistic person and their holistic experience can either shapes who they are and how they show up in all areas of their life, at work, at home, whether they're at their best, whether they're not. And when we think about engagement surveys at work, or how we think about relationships at work, we often segment them. We always, we
Mhm.
focus on the relationship with the manager, or the relationship with the team, or the relationship with peers. How might relationships at home influence how people show up at work? And what's something that HR and leaders should keep in mind about that?
Yeah, so many good observations and questions in there. Um, when I present inside corporations, if I'm presenting something on communications, for example, and how to have great conversations, learning conversations with other people at work, almost every time I present, somebody will come up to me and say, I know that you're talking about work, but how
Yep.
would this work with my 19-year-old son, with my sister, with my spouse, with my elderly parents? Like,
Mm,
help me to take what you're talking about over here and bring it home to my most important personal relationships. And I got to say, I love it when people ask that question. It
yeah.
allows us to take this into a whole new dimension. And that's where people are going to want to practice something new, try something new. And I actually had one person tell me that I saved his marriage as a result of my professional workshop, which was so wonderful, but also so funny. We know that people are whole people. And much as we like to think we can compartmentalize, it's really hard to do that,
Mhm.
especially if you are worried about those close personal relationships. If those are not going well, but also when those do go well, it gives us the boost that we bring into the workplace. And there is this notion of emotional contagion, which is that we catch emotions from other people. The research says up to 3 degrees of
Mhm.
separation. And so if I have an emotional incident happen in the morning and then I drive into work and I'm communicating with, let's say, the front desk receptionist, and then she goes and talks to her, like accountant or whatever, and they go and talk to someone else, like those emotions are traveling through that network, and somebody 2 or 3 degrees away from me could be affected by my emotional experience without even realizing it.
Wow.
So we have to think so much about what we're bringing into the workplace, and our home relationships can affect that. And then the opposite happens when we go home. Those work relationships and emotional incidents affect what we bring home. And I imagine everybody has had the experience of walking through the door at home and somebody says, how did it go? And we either grumble or we're elated or whatever. And now we're affecting the emotional tenor of our home environment as well. So it's real. I mean, let's just acknowledge that is absolutely real.
Yeah.
And you also asked what HR can do
Mhm.
about this and what they need to know. I think we just need to recognize that it's people who show up at work
Mm,
and that we all have people experiences and that those relationships matter. And we want to have an organizational culture of psychological safety where we can say to each other something like, wow, Jordana, you just don't really seem to be yourself right now. Do you need a couple of moments? Because I know you to be a kind, caring person, but right now you sound very frazzled. Is
mm,
everything okay? And just to
mm,
be able to have those conversations to extend the grace to each other. Plus, having been an executive director myself and having a team underneath me, I would hope that leaders also have the ability to let people take breaks, to let
mm,
people go home. to let people attend to those most important relationships. I have supervised, for example, mothers of young kids, and they would come up to me very apologetic and say, I just got a call from the school. I need to go. I'm really sorry. I'm like, go. Don't bother apologizing. Just leave. And when
Mhm.
leaders are able to do things like that, it actually increases engagement, it increases commitment, it increases that discretionary effort, and it improves the relationships that those leaders have with people on their teams as well. There's going to be a lot more trust and loyalty happening there. So, recognizing that our relationships can build when we allow other people to attend to their relationships. It's this lovely sort of emergent property with these upward cycles.
Mm, mm, that, ugh, I wish I could like package that in a box and carry it with me to every conversation I have with HR and leaders. That was so wonderful, Lisa. And there's two things in that that I just want to kind of sum up that I think are really important. One is what you just called out. It is easy to get under the surface. It is easy to stay at the surface, but it's also easy to get under the surface. And the way that people show up, there's things going on that we might not be aware of. And if we take it to mean that it's something that we did or take it at face value, it's going to impact how they show up. It's going to impact how we show up because of that emotional contagion. So all it takes is noticing that somebody feels a little off or different, or it could be somebody feels really on and excited, and
Completely.
engaging with them to explore what's going on there, what they need, and how you can support, and that
Yeah.
builds that discretionary effort. And then the second thing that you didn't outwardly say, but I think was embedded in everything you talked about, and this is one of the things that I like to bring up in each of these sessions, is while we talk about each element individually, they are a blend of elements. And the quality of our relationships impacts our mindset. It impacts
Yes.
the career choices we make if that relationship at home is being negatively impacted by our career drivers, that can change the career choices we make. Um, it can connect to our sense of purpose, and it can even connect to our health outcomes. Now, Lisa and I are
Yeah.
both big psychology nerds, and we know that the longest ever study on people's life satisfaction and health outcomes is something known as the Harvard Longitudinal Study. And the biggest predictor of life satisfaction and health at age 80 is whether or not you can say, I have a close relationship at age 50. It's more predictive than cholesterol. It's more predictive than
Yeah.
socioeconomic status. It's more predictive than whether or not you're a smoker. Is the quality of your relationships at the age of 50 predict longevity at 80? So
It
that
is
connection between
so,
relationship and health is like
yeah.
this.
It is so amazing. And there's all sorts of other studies that I know you're aware of, Jordana, that if we're undergoing some sort of painful procedure, holding the hand of somebody who cares makes it less painful. That if we are standing at the bottom of a steep hill with a friend, the hill looks less steep. That we're able to go longer, work harder when somebody is by our side. I mean, there's all sorts of things where those relationships and just having somebody else there with you is hugely predictive of our ability to persevere, to overcome. And I know I'm talking a lot about kind of negative emotional experiences because there's that negativity bias and bad feels stronger than good and all those sorts of things. These are also the situations where managers have more challenges. And so when an employee comes in and they're all positive and optimistic and bubbly, most managers know how to respond in that
Mm.
situation. Whereas if someone comes in and they're having a really hard day, a lot of managers feel ill equipped to do that. And even just noticing, wow, things seem to be really hard for you right now, the research again says that when leaders take a guess at somebody's emotional experience and get it wrong, it don't matter. The employee is happy that you tried. that they are trying to pick up on something in you and that you are feeling seen, that you're feeling felt, like that there
Mm.
is that attempt being made at a connection. So it's okay to even get it wrong. It's just so important to build those connections and relationships.
So let's build on that because I think that's a
Mhm.
really great segue. You just shared something as simple as, saying, oh, it sounds like you're feeling X. Is that correct? Can be a really great micro behavior. So, what are some other behaviors or micro moments that make the biggest difference in building trust and connection with people?
Yeah, so there's some very basic behavioral things, and these will be no surprise to anybody. Being present with the person, right? If you are going to have a meeting with somebody or a conversation with someone, just like we are right now, be there, right? Turn out the other technology. If possible, get the phone out of the room, put it in a desk, like don't even, or put it in a drawer. Don't even have it on your desk because even the visibility of a phone changes the quality of the
Mm,
conversation. Eye contact as much as possible, which is hard through the computer because I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at the computer on my screen. And so it doesn't look like eye contact, but at least be there instead of like looking down or staring out the window or something like that. So that presence really helps. And architect your environment the best you need to be able to give that other person your full attention. The other thing, and I'm a coach, I'm a big fan of coaching skills. I think coaching skills are life skills. I think they are relationship skills. And a lot of leaders, they're used to having the answer, right? This is probably
mm,
why you got promoted. You were good at your job, you know what you're doing, you're very competent, you're probably a good person, and other people like you. And you probably have this natural human reaction to want to alleviate somebody else's suffering. And so when somebody comes in and they're on the struggle bus, you want to give them answers and you want to help alleviate the struggle and send them out in a better state, which is a great urge and it's a great intention, but it's not always going to work, especially if somebody is feeling like completely overwhelmed and you're like, just go do this thing. And they are not feeling felt, they're not feeling the connection. So being able to reflect on what it is you're noticing about the person with empathy, and that's kind of like more a cognitive empathy, right? Like you can imagine being in their shoes, but you're not feeling enmeshed in part of it. And we can be empathetic with someone even if we don't agree. I mean, think
yeah.
about a toddler who has spilled their ice cream on the sidewalk and they are having the worst time of their life. And this is the end of their world. And
I
we can
feel that,
feel
by the way. You know how much I love ice cream
and cake,
and
all the
cake.
cake. And so we can give that toddler a hug and we can say, oh, yeah, that's really bad, right? Like, here's how we'll fix it. Or, look, there's something else going on over here. And we can help them emotionally regulate. And we don't agree that this is the worst thing that has ever happened in the whole entire world. And same thing with our employees, right? If you've got someone who comes in and they're fairly new, and they're absolutely convinced that they have broken some process or broken some piece of equipment or whatever, and you with your 20 years of experience are thinking it's not that bad, you can still be empathetic towards the person. And honestly, if they're feeling upset about it, it's a good sign because it means that they care and it
Yes.
means that they want to fix it. And then I would say the next piece is ask them some questions. Ask them what's most important for them right now. Ask them how you can help, what it is that they would like from you. Now, a lot of leaders get very nervous when I suggest that because they're like, what if my employee asks me to do something that I can't do, don't want to do, won't do? Like, you get to set the boundaries. You get to say
Mm,
yes or no. It's a negotiation. So if they say, well, I want you to march into the CEO's office and demand a 200% raise for me, you can say, well, not going to happen. And you do improv, you know the importance of the and.
yeah.
And what would be helpful? If I were to do that, what outcomes would you be looking for? And are there other ways that we can get to those outcomes or take a first step in that direction? And engage them in the problem solving, engage them in the next steps. And what
Mm,
you're doing is you're helping them to emotionally regulate, you're helping them to problem solve. You're creating a great relationship between the two of you. Because now, if their ideas that they generate with your support work, guess what? They're going to come back to you. They're going to keep you more in the loop. They're going to seek your feedback more often. They're going to grow and develop. And you aren't doing all the work for them. You're not fixing their mistakes. You're not cleaning up the mess that they have left. And the job of a leader, I would say, is to grow and develop other leaders. And that's what you're going to be doing when you're able to do some of this.
Mm, mm, mm.
That's a whole lot. I hope I even answered the first
You
question.
did, you did, and I mean, I think like a couple of the takeaways from that is empathy doesn't cost you anything,
Nothing.
um,
And it can be
and
so small and so
yeah,
easy. Yeah.
and even like, all right, so here's a great example where we can model this. You know, Linda just kind of commented us, and part to see a person, to acknowledge them, to appreciate them. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting. And if there's anything that we can specifically add to help you, if you've got a question on your mind, feel free to throw it in. Something that came up for me, Lisa, as you were talking, you are doing great research when it comes to manager feedback. And I think we all know the importance of manager feedback for engagement, for performance, for organizational success. And that's a key part of relationship building. Based on your research, what are some things that organizations could do to embed better feedback as part of their way of working in like organizational DNA?
Yeah. What a great question. So when we think about feedback in an organization, we tend to think about the annual performance reviews, which, most managers say is one of the most stressful things they have to do as a manager. And employees, even though they say they want feedback, it's not necessarily how they want feedback or what they want feedback
Mm,
on. And so I think annual performance reviews, they're important for certain organizational purposes, such as let's check in on the quantitative goals, let's check in on performance. Maybe there are bonuses associated with it, for example. But honestly, once a year is kind of a sucky cadence to be giving feedback on performance. Plus, our world is very dynamic, right? Those goals shift all the time. And what you thought was important in January isn't important by the time you get to April,
mm,
certainly not in September, and not in December when you're having your end of, the year review kind of thing. So I think we really need to make it okay and in fact encourage that these feedback conversations happen frequently, and for managers to realize that this doesn't even have to be a formal process. You can give feedback about anything at any time, and it can be very short. One of the things that I love about the research on feedback is that feedback doesn't cost anything. And so people who say, I have no budget, doesn't matter. You're not buying anything to give people feedback. And it happens in the course of normal conversations. So, again, for people who say, I don't have time, doesn't matter. You can give feedback in 30 seconds, and you're probably giving feedback without even recognizing it. And so, if organizations are able to recognize this, to normalize this, and to give managers better skills on how we deliver that feedback so it gets us both task and relationship. There are some leadership assessments that say, oh, you're task focused or you're people focused. Like, no,
mm.
I do not agree with this dichotomy. They are not at opposite ends of the spectrum. You can have both. You can absolutely give feedback in a way that helps people improve their task performance and gets you really good, trusting relationships between you and your direct reports. And so, feedback is this cheap, short, powerful intervention that I really wish organizations did more with. And so that managers would feel more confident doing this and see the immediate and the long term benefits from it.
Mm, mm, mm. And yeah, I mean, there's so much good in there about like feedback being something that happens in the natural course of conversation, feedback being something that we could get a little clearer on what type of feedback would actually add value, and how do we all know it's important. How do we really prioritize it? And I think you're hitting on something that we talk a lot about it at Shiftwell, and feedback is a big part of relationships. We see this both as personal practice and as systemic priority.
Yeah.
And when we think about feedback, when we think about relationship building, it's not this forced one time event or check the box activity. It's about how are we designing intentionally and creating systems for connection so that those pieces are coming together and creating a great whole. And, as you were talking, I think about how many times maybe there are questions in surveys about how frequently you get feedback from your manager, or whether feedback is helpful, but we don't actually understand what quality feedback looks like.
Mhm.
Um, we don't kind of get under the surface and identify who are leaders that are giving best feedback, what they're doing differently, or when we're asking people whether or not they're getting helpful feedback, what does helpful feedback actually look to them? So, something as just a thought experiment for anybody listening in. And, what if we thought differently about what we ask and how we measure, to focus instead on, is the thing happening, to defining what that quality is, and, whether or not that quality is there. Like I think about NPS scores for customers. Imagine if we had NPS scores for manager feedback conversations. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, right? How cool would that be? All right. So, oh my gosh, Lisa, I could go on and on with you for hours, and I have before, and I wish this
And we will
conversation was
continue to do so
we will
another time.
we will continue. But as we wrap up,
Yeah.
we think a lot about there's been so many different suggestions that you've brought up, and I'd like to ask you, what's the smallest shift that somebody could take today? One actionable takeaway that anyone can possibly do in the next 24 hours to strengthen their relationship, even if it's just one relationship at work, one relationship at home. What would you say to them?
Based on everything that we've talked about, what's immediately coming to mind is when you have your next conversation with anybody, and I mean anybody, right? The checkout clerk at the grocery store. It really doesn't matter. Just make the intentional decision to be present in that
Mm,
moment for that conversation. And whatever that means to you, eye contact, put the technology away, take a deep breath, really focus on the other person and recognize them as a human being who is a whole person, who has thoughts and feelings and experiences, and just enter into that conversation, whatever it is, transactional, transformational, feedback, catching up on your day. Just be in that conversation and notice what shifts for you and what shifts for the quality of that conversation with the other person, just as a result of that one intentional shift.
mm, mm. Thank you, Lisa. Every single one of us can make that intention to be more present. And if we find ourselves not being present, instead of beating ourselves up about it,
Just come back.
refocus, come
Just
back to
come
that
back.
moment. And remember, I love what you just said. Each person we interact with is a whole person, and we don't have a whole story.
Yes,
So if I
never.
get present, I get curious, notice what shifts. Well, Lisa, I can't thank you enough for your presence today.
Thank
Um,
you.
Bringing your whole self to this conversation and helping to really remind us that thriving organizations are truly built one conversation, one relationship at a time. Thank you
Absolutely.
for being here, and thank everybody who took their time live and who are watching it afterwards. You've got some gold here from Lisa that can help you, that can help your organization, and we look forward to seeing you next time.